All right, module 4 strategy. Here we're going to look at selling a straddle. Last module we looked at a strangle. This model we're going to look at a straddle. Again, I don't make these names up, guys. It's just what they call them. It's just a way for us to communicate what we're talking about. As you'll find in most situations, there's only a couple of things you can do. You can buy and sell stock. You can buy or sell a call, and you can buy or sell a put. And all of these strategies are always going to be one or a combination of those things. So straddle is the combination of selling both a put, so you sell a put and you sell a call in a stock. But as opposed to a strangle where you sell it outside of the stock price, in the case of a straddle, you're going to sell it at the money. You're going to sell two options, the opposite options, right at the money of the stock. Now, it should be obvious when I describe it to you that way, if the rest of the other weeks have sunk in, that this would be a neutral strategy because we're selling both sides of the coin. So we want the stock to stay within a range. Kind of like the strangle, you're going to get double the credit because you're going to be selling two options. Like the strangle, you're going to have risk on both sides. And you're going to have a higher credit than a strangle because you're using at the money options. So let's take a look at this. Let's go to Tastyworks. Why not? So here we're in SPY. And let's look at our options. Last week we talked about selling a strangle. And when I said selling a strangle, I said sell two out of the money options. You're going to sell the out of the money put, the out of the money call, and preferably you would do it at the one standard deviation line. So in SPY, I'm going to sell the 15 delta put. There it is right there. And the 15 delta call. And I can find these, or excuse me, the one standard deviation call. I can find these pretty easily in Tastyworks because this little dashed line here shows me one standard deviation. So that would be a strangle. Now down here at the bottom, you can just clear out trades in Tastyworks by hitting that little eraser. This would be a straddle, selling the at the money call and the at the money put. So at the money is at the current stock price. So it's currently at 238.34. Closest we have to that is 238. Now look at the credit of this straddle. It's 674. Let me go in and buy that. Sell that strangle again at one. I'm just going to do it just outside of one standard deviation. There we go. Look, it's 117. So the credit for a straddle is much higher than a strangle. Now the reason for that is because when you go closer to the money, the extrinsic value, which is that time and volatility value of an option, gets higher. Now again, the market's close here, so we're not seeing prices for everything, but you can see it right here. As you get closer to the money, the extrinsic value goes up. Again, you're not seeing it there, but once if the market were open, we would see that. So you're collecting more extrinsic value. That's that time and volatility value. Now, if you think about it, what is the probability of the stock moving these prices? Well, we can tell that pretty easily from the delta. The deltas are right around 50. So it's about a 50-50 shot. The stock will stay, you'll move past one of those strikes. What we're trying to do with a strangle is say, okay, let me come here and put this strangle back on. Sell the at the money call and the at the money put. What we're trying to do here is make sure that the stock doesn't move so much. The credit we collected for the strangle doesn't help us out. So let me take a look at the curve view here. I'm going to go to curve. And did I sell? Hang on, did I do something wrong there? Part of the problem with doing these while the market is closed is sometimes you get quirky pricing. Let me just try a different expiration. There we go. If I come up here to the left and go to the curve view, I kind of like this view because it shows you your profit zones. But essentially this green zone right here is where I make money. And this red zone right here is where I start losing money. And we'll look at and think of swim here in a second, but just imagine kind of a curve that goes like this is kind of how it's going to work. You're going to make the most amount of money if the stock stays right at the strike prices of the options, and you're going to lose money as it goes away. And then eventually, when you get to this point, which is your break even, this is where the credit you've collected is not enough to counteract the stock price movement. You start losing money. So let's compare that to the strangle. So let me erase that out and then bring that in. So I'm going to clear out this trade. And if you come up here to this in Tastyworks, just come up to the strategy menu in the top. Here I just got short strangle, which is selling a strangle. Just hit go. And here's my call and my put, and I'm just going to drag them out. This is this nice visual view. I kind of like it. You see how this profit zone is wider, right? And as I drag my, what they call wings, the sides of my trade wider, the profit area gets wider. But what's also happening, keep your eye on the credit. As I move my strikes wider, I have a higher probability of making money because this amount has to, the stock can move within this range, but I'm not collecting much money. Now, another thing that's cool about Tastyworks is if you look down here at the bottom, there's two things, the POP and the P50. Now, you can calculate these on paper, but Tastyworks does it for you. What this is POP is probability of profit. That is the probability of me making 1 penny on this trade. Okay, so there's a 96% chance that I'll make a penny on this trade. That kind of makes sense, right? Because I'm right at 2. If I bring this in just a little bit, there we go. I'm at 2 standard deviations, and based upon norm, the normal distribution we talked about in the last module, 96% sounds about right. Now this P50, let me just get to a pricing point here where I can get myself a P50. There we go. This P50 is the probability that I will make 50% on my trade. In other words, I'm selling this for 50 cents. Maximum amount of money I can make when I sell an option is the price that I sell it for. So maximum I can make is 50 cents. This is the probability of me making half that. So it's the probability of me making 25 cents, or because it's 100 shares, $25 on this trade. This is a 94% probability of me making $25. This is going to be important moving forward because we're always going to manage trades at 50% of their max profit generally. A couple of exceptions to that, but we'll talk about those as we move along. Now, let's see what happens. Keep your eye on the credit, the probability of profit, and the P50 as I grab these options and drag them closer to the money. You see the probability is reducing, right? Probability is going down, 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 but my credit is going up, 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 up. And as I get closer to the money, I get right at the money, my credit is really big, but my pop is 61%, and my probability to get 50% of my credit is only 50%. Now, we actually, just to counteract something I just said, we're going to manage strangles at, we're going to sell them back, I should say, when we made 25% of our profit. We're going to close them out, not sell them back, just close them out. We make 25% of our max profit, in which case this one, if I'm selling this strangle for 674 times 0.25, I'm going to try and make about $170 on this strangle. Now, what that does, and we'll go into this in more detail in Module 5, but what that does is it increases our probability of profit even more. Instead of trying to take the entire amount, 100% out of the trade, taking a lower percentage increases our probability of profit that bit more. And you can see that here, generally speaking, the probability of getting to 50% is higher than the probability of getting, of making any money at all. So now, I know this seems quirky, but that's the deal. Now let's look at that profit and loss diagram in Thinkorswim. So if we go to Thinkorswim, go to Analyze, bring up, let's just stick with SPY and go wherever you want though, and go to Add Simulated Trade, and open up closest to 45 days, and we're going to sell at the money options. Now a little tip for you here, if you hold down Control on your keyboard, and this is true of both Windows and Mac, hold down Control on your keyboard, you can sell more than one option. So I'll go hold down Control, sell the call, sell the put, and then I let go of my control. Now, if I keep my control down, I could add more in here if I wanted to. And we'll do that as the strategies get more complex. So I've added my simulated trade, come up here at the top, go to risk profile. Okay, perfect. And as you can see, here's the risk profile of the straddle. The stock has to stay within these boundaries, which is give or take 232, what's that, like 248, something like that. And I make my most money right here at the peak. Now you'll find, generally speaking, when selling options, that you make the most money when a stock hits the strike of your option, your sold option, at expiration. So this blue line is the expiration date, which is April 21st. If SPY were right at 239 on April 21st, I'd make my max profit. But you see, it can move quite a distance out. Now, this distance is actually pretty easily calculated. It's just the current price of the stock plus the credit you've collected, okay, for the actual strangle. Does that make sense? Because, you know, if your stock goes down in price, goes up, you're going to start losing money, but you've collected money in the first place. It's kind of like with selling a put. If you remember, if I were to clear this out, and if I were to come down here, go back to add simulated trades, and I just want to delete, let me just kill this one and just sell the put. So sell in the bid, back to risk profile. Look, the put, here's my break even down here below the current stock price. It's below the current stock price by $3.94 because that's what I collected for the put. Now, we looked at the diagram of the straddle last week, but the strangle, excuse me, but this is a fairly narrow strangle. But the strangle has that flat line in the middle. And the wider you make those, the wider that flat line gets. So you collect more money for a straddle. The stock cannot move as far. So the question is, and this is just something for you to ruminate as time goes by, why would you choose a straddle over a strangle? And just to remind you, the PL diagrams, oops, PL, strangle, and straddle. PL diagram for a strangle looks like this. PL diagram for a straddle looks like that. Why would you sell one over another? That's your activity for this one. And you don't need to post this necessarily to Facebook if you don't want to. I guess that's true of everything. But if you have some solid ideas why you think that might be the case, post it and maybe we can get a discussion going there. So there you go, the straddle. Go sell some straddles in your paper trading account on the items we have in our watch list or any stock, as long as it's liquid.